How's it going, everybody? In this video, I wanted to cover something that I've seen a couple times in the past, but I don't think I've ever covered it in a video, or maybe I have. I honestly don't remember. But one of the things that I wanted to cover real quick with you guys is the issue where the host VM can't install or leverage the ability to deploy or power on a VM, and how to solve that problem. So the VM, or the way that this works out here is I have this server right here. I've got three ESXI hosts, and on another server, which is .80, which is just my other server that I've got running here. He is the one that's running the domain controller as well as vCenter server. So if we look right here, here is vCenter, here is the domain controller. Excuse me. So the problem we run into here is this. Oh, and the other caveat, let me just show you how this is all put together. So this PC1, this PC right here is this remote desktop connection. Okay, so I'm already keyed into this VM. So the problem I had was I went to go deploy a VM in the virtual environment, and I had this little this guy pop up, and I was like, what is this? Now I know about the issue, but it didn't hit me right away as to what it was. Where it is long mode is unsupported. So the idea here is this. The basic breakdown is if you're running a 64-bit operating system, you're utilizing all the support that that platform can offer you. So you can't take another device that is also 64-bit and expect it to be able to utilize the 64-bit operations. So if the architecture is already in use by another operating system, and then you deploy another operating system on top of that is also 64-bit, there's nowhere for it to go. Now I could deploy 32-bit and that would work, but I don't want to do that. So there's an easy way to fix this. What I would have to do is I would have to power off these three hosts, and then from vCenter, which is on another server, I would have to join this physical host, so 10.255.1.52. I'd have to join it to vCenter. And then I would have to enable this server. I would have to enable it to allow these VMs right here, 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3, to be able to communicate with the CPU of this server here, 10.252.1.52, in order to allow long mode support. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and power these guys off. So these are VMs, they're virtual. I don't really care if I shut them down correctly or not. In the VMware course that I will be doing here in the near future, I will do that. But what I have to do is I've actually got to go back over to, and PC1 is still up, so I can remote back into him. So we're going to go back over here to this IP, and we're going to go, and on this domain controller we're going to come in here and add a host. So I'm going to say that I want to add 10.255.1.52 and say next. I'm going to give it the username and the password, and it's going to go in, it's going to see all these VMs, which is fine. I'm going to just next through all this and finish it. So it's going to go out and it's going to join. So the host is already associated. Where am I associated here? See who I've connected to. So if I go to this guy, and I go to summary, you know what, I'm going to disconnect from there, but I think I'm in the wrong. Let me disconnect, disassociate. So I am forcing this VM, or this host, to disassociate from vCenter server. So let's give that a second too. I wonder if it's going to bug out. And that would be the problem. I'm not sure if I, yep, see it's, it didn't like that. So I need, okay, I did disassociate though, it did work. So it's in progress. Because I don't ever join the physical servers to vCenter as a dedicated host, I join the VMs that ride inside of it because I need this server as for communication. So once that guy is done, which he is now, so now I'm no longer associated to vCenter, so now I can go back over here to this guy here, and I can go ahead and join this host. So add a host, and we're going to do this again. So 10.255.1.52, and we're going to say we're not going to put it in the cluster. Let me actually do this. Cancel. And okay, that was why. Let me go ahead and I don't want him to be in the cluster. So he's already here actually. So because he's here, let's see. If we come in here and we go, okay, so this will actually work out. Let me click on this guy. And if you go to manage, and we go to the VMware hardware, and we go to edit, the VM has to be powered off too. That's one of the big things. We're going to go here to the CPU, and in the CPU, it says right down here, the hardware virtualization, expose hardware assisted virtualization to the guest operating system. We're going to go ahead and say OK, and that's going to allow okay, so I think, let me go ahead and remove this guy because I think we're having a connection issue. Disconnect. That would be the, okay, so we're going to go ahead and remove him from inventory. Yes. Does take a couple seconds for this to happen, but once it's done, as long as vCenter has IP reachability, you're normally in pretty good shape. And then it's just a bunch of TCP connections back and forth. So they're disconnected as soon as this guy exits out. Usually only takes a couple seconds. If it seems a little slow, it is because everything's running in software. I am planning in the future, I don't know when, of going out and buying 3 or 4 dedicated servers, small ones, 24 or 32 gig, something small like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to join this host 10.255.1.252 to the domain to the data center. So 10.255.1.52. Next, root, and then the password. Next, and then next, and next, and next, and finish. So now he should start to join. Hopefully. We'll see here in a second whether it works or not. 52. So there should be communication. So now we are connected to the vCenter server now. If we minimize this, we should be connected. We're almost there, or just about. So now he'll join under here. Now notice how these are all not responding. That's fine because they're physically powered off. So now what I get to go do is I get to click on him, and I get to go to manage it. I'm going to go click on settings. I'm going to click on the host itself. I'm going to go and I have to go here and I have to, let's see, settings. It's summary. I am looking to, because even though it's a host, I still have to. Oh, this is why I can't do this host directly. I have to do it through this host. So that's my fault. Sorry about that. I had to do it through here because this is a VM running on another host. So I got to come in here and go edit. There we go. Now this should work. Sorry, I was looking in the wrong area. Apologize about that. So we're going to go ahead and expand the CPU, and then we're going to say expose the guest to hardware assisted virtualization. Click on OK. So that should be able to be reconfigured, and it did. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to power him on, power and on, and then that's going to load. I'm going to click on this guy, do the exact same thing. I'm going to go to edit. Now if you have, I've done this before with the viral VM. For those of you familiar with Cisco's virtualization engine that they've put out several years ago, I have to do the exact same thing to that VM as well. Even though I've enabled hardware assisted virtualization in the BIOS of this particular server's BIOS. So I've already done this, and because the fact, and this goes back to some conversations and discussions I've had with people through, just commentary on my YouTube channel and whatnot, that the models of server that I'm using for VMware are not officially supported by VMware. So from the hardware compatibility guide, I actually don't have the ability to go through and if I was to call VMware up and say, hey, this isn't working, they're going to tell me they can't do anything about it because, well, I'm not sure they would be that blunt, but they basically can't do anything for it because as much as ESXI will deploy, ESXI will install, and I can run it. I've been running ESXI on this system for a while now, and it works great. I have to reinstall it every 60 days, but it works great. And then I go through there, and then once I go through there and get everything squared away, I go ahead and I power this guy back on. You're seeing some of the back-end stuff because right now I'm in the process of labbing all this stuff up. I'm literally taking the blueprint from VMware's website, and I am going through and testing a lot of the features out. So if I was to click on this guy right here and go to monitor, I can't do it from there. So I have to go to this guy, I'd have to go to monitor, and I'd have to go to here, or is it, no, I'm sorry, it's summary. Under summary, and if I was to launch remote console, you would see, I'm pretty sure this would work. You know what? VMware Tools is not installed. That's why it's not going. Well, actually, it should. It's powered on and is booting up. So if I was to go back over here to this guy, and actually, I think I pulled it up right. Yeah, here it is. So it's booting. The only difference is, and this is what you should pull up. We'll talk about VMware's remote console in another video, but right now it's in the process of booting. It does take a couple of minutes for it to work. And then once it's booted, we should be able to start the VM inside of this host. So it'll be, we're layering our virtualization. So the first layer of virtualization we have is 10.255.1.52, a physical server, physical IBM server with ESXi installed on top of it. And then instead of ESXi, which is what you're looking at here, instead of vSphere, I've deployed 3 ESXi VMs. So this is virtualization layer 2, right in here. And then inside of here, if we go back over to our setup here, these VMs here are physical hosts. Well, in this case here, a virtual host. And inside these virtual hosts, I have installed VMs inside of them, which would technically be virtualization layer 3. So right now I'm just waiting for the communication to come back online with the hosts. And as soon as they do, it takes a little bit, and now they're all back up. So they're powered on, and we are squared away. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So now if I click over here, this is the moment of truth. If I did everything correctly, I should be able to right click on here and you say power and power on. And in the lower right hand corner of the screen it says power on virtual machine. So the VM is powering on and it is now powered on. So VMware Tools is not installed. So what I'm going to do is, because the way it's being installed, I'm going to go ahead and say install VMware Tools. And it says VMware Tools includes drivers to improve graphics, mouse, networking, and storage for virtual VMware Virtual Devices, click Mount to mount the disk image with VMware Tools, and blah 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 blah. Here's the thing. I need to wait till the VM is installed first, because right now we're going through the install process. If I refresh this real quick, you'll see that there's a we're going to go through the boot process. So this is what the boot process looks like, right? So we're going to go through that. Now here I'm on the remote console. So this is through the web console. So I need to click inside of here, and I need to tab down because the mouse doesn't work. Go down here, spacebar for next, spacebar for install now. So setup is starting. If I scroll down just a little bit, you'll see those details. So we'll have to wait until we get to this point. So I'm going to have to tab my way through here. We're going to accept the license agreement and click next. And then I'm going to come down here to custom install. And then I'm going to use that and wait till next gets blue highlighted, which it's now. Spacebar to do that, and then we're going to go kick off the install. And now it's installing Windows 7. So now I'm going to go ahead and close that out and close. So now it's doing to that process. Now if I ever want to monitor it from remotely, all I have to do is click inside of here. It's going to launch the remote console, and now I get to watch the install happen. Pretty straightforward stuff, pretty interesting if you ask me. So now I can do that. So now what I get to do is I get to watch it do its install. And then once it's done doing the install and Windows 7 is installed, all I have to do then is disconnect Windows 7, the ISO file, from the CD drive. And then I have to click on Install VMware Tools, which will automatically get mounted to the CD drive, install VMware Tools, and then I'll be able to work with this VM directly. Now the only caveat here left to talk about is the server that these VMs are sitting inside of, the actual physical server. I have yet to do this, but I have to take a network cable and attach it to an adapter. And then I have to take that physical adapter, which actually I'll pull this up so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I have to take in the networking portion of things here, and the configuration. I go to networking. I have to take one of these adapters, and if I come in here and go ahead and add networking, and I say next, I have a couple of adapters that I can choose from. I have not decided which ones I'm going to use yet. That's something to come in the future. But for instance, I can come in here and say create a new virtual switch and use vMNIC 4 and vMNIC 5 or whatever else I choose to use, and then I can click on next, and then what will end up happening is once I have that deployed and running, then all I have to do is map this for instance, I'll just walk you through how it could look. So now that I've got that, and we're going to say it's VM Network 2, we're going to say VM prod, for instance. And then I can come in here, if I want to just allow it to communicate with the outside world, I click on next and finish. And then what I get to do is, now it's deployed, I'm going to go ahead and click on properties. I'm going to edit, I'm going to allow it to communicate internally. Click on close. And then what all I got to do is on host 1 here, click on edit settings, and then on one of these adapters, we'll say adapter 6 for instance, I can click on VM prod and click on OK. Now what that will allow me to do is then take that information, because now it's been mapped, I can then take that and then from the physical host, which is this guy right here, I can click on the networking, because I have a distributed vSwitch here. I can take one of these, like this vMNIC here, I can map that and then allow that to communicate with the outside world. Because vMNIC 13, this guy is doing it right now, so I can communicate inside of the, from the outside in, as I've allowed that to happen. So all I would have to do is create another kernel adapter and then map this to a, like here we have, I don't have a, oh yeah I do, right there. So this guy's been connected here, but there's no virtual machines inside of it. So if I was to go back to hosts and clusters and say click on this VM and go to right click and say edit settings and then pull up the network, and then I clicked on prod and said okay. Once this PC is done installing, I should be able to use the outside world to communicate. And that's the benefit here, because now I've mapped it, and assuming that everything is done correctly and I've got the mappings set up right, that's the general logic. If it doesn't work, I'll have to figure out some other way of getting it to work, because I want it to be allowed to be able to communicate. But that's the idea, because then I can go through and do other things and stuff like that. But that's the general idea here. You want to map it to the outside world. So that's one of the things that I'm working on right now. I'm going to wait for this guy to be finished installing, which this PC is going to take a long time to install. So once the PC is done installing and we're squared away, then I'll be able to take it to the next level and actually get in there and do other things. So that's basically how this comes into play. And the cool thing now is I can come up to DC2 and I can go on monitor. Now, actually, I'm sorry, wrong, not PC. I don't have anything deployed in a cluster yet, so I can't look at the cluster wide. I can go to the summary tab here, this guy, and I can look at the memory, and I'm using about 4 gigs of RAM. Between 2 and 2.5 of that is going to the VM itself. So I've got one guy here deployed, and after a little while, this guy will come up and start running. I'm only going to do 3 or 4, maybe 5 PCs total, and then maybe 1 server. The idea here is to make sure that I can get the reachability that I need and stuff like that. The problem you run into with having a nested virtualization deployed is it's insanely slow, and other than beyond learning purposes, there's really no benefit. I mean, literally, that's it. I can't go and tell a customer of mine, hey, I'll just allow you to use my hosted virtual environment. You know, they won't work. So that's why I'm going to go out and get a few physical servers that are, you know, cheap, a few $100 a piece, and then run a dedicated VM environment that way. And so, because there's other things that I want to go learn VMware wise, like network NSX, which is the network virtualization product. Desktop mobility for doing things like VDI and Horizon and stuff like that. There's some things that I want to go learn, but that's basically what you guys get going on. You can see here. So that's pretty much it. Now, one of the cool things here is once this PC is deployed, I could right-click on here and migrate, and I'm going to say just hosting clusters. So this is basically essentially what vMotion is. And as soon as the hosts pull up, right now I've got only 1 host. So I have to go see why exactly I can't migrate at the moment, but these hosts right here, I'd have to go double check and see what's up with that, because I should be able to vMotion between the hosts, but that's pretty much how that works at the moment. So yeah. That last piece there, the vMotion, I'm not sure why the other hosts aren't showing up. That's a little concerning, because they should, because they're sharing the storage. So actually, that's one of the things too, because I'm right here. I'm going to go yes. I'm going to go ahead and console in via the vSphere client and get these guys deployed. So give that a couple seconds for it to connect. So it's going to load the inventory. And then the last piece here is, yep, that's fine. We should have Win 7 PC1. So if I go in here and I click on this guy and I open up another vSphere client, I type in -2 and I go, we're gonna install the certificate and ignore the warning. We'll get him connected, and then I just need to make sure that yep, that's fine. The summary, that might be the problem. Okay, so let's see here, configuration wise, storage adapters. Okay, so here's one of the problems. The iSCSI adapter's not here, and neither is the other storage. So I'm going to go rectify that here locally, but normally you would do this from here, and you would click on the host here, which is 212, and then you would go to manage, and then you would, go to networking. There's a VM kernel adapter here. You know what, I might not have had this done yet. So storage, you would say storage adapter. You would come in here, you'd add one, add a nice SCSI adapter, click on OK, and then you would have to map the storage adapter. It didn't take. SCSI adapter. Oh, there it goes. Maybe I'm just impatient. So we're going to click on this guy. We're going to go to network port binding. We're going to add a port binding. We're going to go in here and say SAN 1 and SAN 2. Click on OK. And then we need to go to a target, and we need to specify the target, which is 10.1.1.210. Click on OK. So it's going to go out there and talk. There's already, the networking is already set up. So for instance, when we start talking about the building of a virtual environment, the networking has to be set up first, and then the storage can come later. So we go over here to devices, and we click on rescan all HBAs and storage devices. We're going to go ahead and scan it, so we should get a file here that pops in, which should be the SAN storage. So that's going to take a couple seconds for it to actually work, but once it does, we'll get a pop-up that it does, and there it is. So now if I go to storage devices, I need to go in here and I need to, there it goes, now it's there. So if I go back over here to this guy and I click on host 2, now it's there, right? So now it's there, it's available. If I go back to summary, I see the storage adapter. If I right click in here and I go to browse data store, I see Win7 PC1. That's exactly what you should see. Now if I minimize this guy and I go back over here to expand this guy out and I right click here and I go to migrate, I should see host 2 show up. And I do. So I could migrate this VM in mid-flight. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to corrupt the install, but that's how that would come into play. So taking what vMotion and storage vMotion allows us to do, I could then take that concept of vMotion between moving a VM between ESXI hosts of compatible capabilities. I could throw them into a cluster, enable DRS, and then that's going to allow the VM environment, vCenter, to dynamically move stuff around. We're going to cover all that stuff in the VMware course that I'm looking at putting together, but right now I'm going back through and nailing things up the way that they need to be nailed up first, and then we're going to go and take a look at those details as we go along. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to click on this guy, and we're getting closer, but as you can see, it takes a couple seconds for it to pop up. See if it's actually going to pull up this time. It was actually really close, probably not much farther along. Actually, I can go click on it quicker this way. I can right click on here and click on, although it's really slow. Summary. I don't want to push it too far or too hard because I'm afraid that it's going to crash, and I don't want it to crash. So that's the last thing I want to do. So did it finally pull up? No, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to let it sit and figure itself out. But once it's done, if we go over here to the monitor mode, you're going to see, actually it's on the host. You'll see the monitoring of the host. You'll see the performance, and you'll see that the host is under some duress once it decides to show up. But that's basically how it comes into play. It's getting worked a little bit. It's in pretty good shape for the most part right now, but we're going to let that sit until the VM is deployed and ready to go, and then we'll be able to take a look at it from connection error. Yep, that's fine. No big deal there. So we have that going, and we're good to go. So that's pretty much what I wanted to show you in this video. I know this is a little bit longer, but I wanted to show you some other peripheral things and stuff like that, and go from there. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you guys later.